So, good evening and welcome to Grown and Sexy Sistahs Talk. This is real conversation for real women about real life. And we are back at it again. And today I'm so happy to have with me Dr. Tonya Featherston. Now, Dr. Tonya is the happy doctor.
So that's a good way to put it.
This is a happy doctor. So we've had all these conversations about mental health and depression and anxiety and all these things. But today we want to talk about being happy. So we have Dr. Tonya on today. Dr. Tonya is the CEO and Chief Happiness Officer at the Center for Social Emotional Wellness in Maryland. So Dr. Tonya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am super excited to be here. And like I said, I love the way you put that, the happiness doctor. That's definitely it. It's I strive to be for sure in my own life and to help other people have it in their lives.
That's wonderful. We don't find that a lot. So I'm so excited to have you. Dr. Tonya and I had a little conversation the other day, and I was so thrilled about the things that she said. It was just mind blowing. So I wanted to get her on the line with us, and so we can ask her some questions about being happy. So are you ready to get to it, Dr. Tonya?
I'm ready and excited about it.
All right, awesome. So Dr. Tonya, tell us a little bit about your practice and what inspired you to build a business that focuses on positive psychology and mental health prevention.
Okay. Originally, I was a teacher. So I was a teacher for a number of years, probably about 18 years. And then I got into school administration. But my life as a teacher, and I've always been, and I still consider myself a teacher, even though I'm a psychologist now, because I'm an educational psychologist. So again, still doing that sort of teaching piece of it. Okay. But during my years of teaching, I always loved the kids. I loved what I was doing. I know it was what I was born to do, but it was highly stressful. And it was one of those things I can even remember being warned by my parents. And actually my mother even forbid me to become a teacher.
Wow. Okay.
She was like, it's one of those, you're very smart. She was like, it's a thankless job. It doesn't pay well. She was like, there's just not enough reward in it. But it was something I was very drawn to.
Okay.
And so in all the years of doing it, it was just, very stressful. And sometimes, people think, you move from one job to the next or one school to the next, one company to the next, that is going to be different, that somehow, the next company is going to be less stressful than the one before. And so I moved around quite a bit and realized, okay, all these schools are the same. It doesn't matter from, the Midwest all the way. I went to Hawaii, then I came to Maryland, all the same. Didn't change, not too much changed. It's just a stressful job. Yeah. There's a lot of stress that comes with it. And so for me, it was really some health issues that I had around being that stressed and really not having good self-care practices that pushed me in this direction. And I thought, there are a lot of people who do this job and do it well, and we love it, but we also deserve a good quality of life while we're doing it. And so that was really what started to move me in that direction, was me personally trying to figure out how can I continue to do what I love, but not be overwhelmed by this, not be stressed out by this, not have poor health behind this, both physical health and mental health. And so that's really what caused me to say, okay, we have to come up with better ways to live and to be and to do the things that we love to do, and to be healthy and enjoy doing it. So I started a lot of the stress management practices that I was using for myself. I just started teaching it to other people. Wow. And so when I would hear people, because, I have lots of friends that are in education, lots of friends that are in corporate America, in retail. And again, we're all singing the same song. We're all saying the same thing. Whether with the corporate America route and you're making the six figures, even when I became an administrator and, making six figures, because I thought, it's the salary. Yeah. I'm getting paid more because I'm a principal now. And so this is going to somehow make this better. And it didn't. It was still, I was like, oh my God, I'm more stressed and overwhelmed now than I ever was. I have a lot of money, but I don't even have a desire to spend it because I'm stressed and burnt out. So, so it really was, me looking at that and saying, I enjoy teaching other people things, but I really want to take this and help us to figure out how we can have healthier lives, especially all the sort of new knowledge about mental health that's out there and a lot of the mental health disorders. And I was like, okay, well, we don't want to go just the disorder route, because this is a preventative thing. This is something that there's a lot of things that you can do that people don't know. And so I started to know a lot of people that were on medication for so many things. And I just thought, okay, I want to be the positive side of this. Right. And so it started out with just doing workshops and offering stress management workshops, those kinds of things. And then it moved into, more and more things as it went from there.
Okay, that's amazing. Wow, you gave me so much good stuff. I don't even know how to dissect that. My gosh. I'm sitting here like, ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. But let's focus in. Two things I want to focus in on, and that was the positive psychology part. But also, I love how you spoke about the fact that you recognize that you were going from job to job and you were still feeling that stress. And then you even went to a higher paying job because surely it's the fact that we're not getting enough money that we're stressed out, right?
Right. That's what we think.
Surely it must be that I don't have enough cash. And so we go and then we get another job thinking that the money is going to be the thing that solves it for us. And then we recognize that, oh my gosh, I just added more stress to my plate. And so I love the fact that you identified that and you're helping us identify that, the stress it's going to follow you from place to place, no matter what, if you don't deal with it. And so I love that part of it. And I know people are listening to the podcast, but I also uploaded to YouTube. But as you were talking, I was like pointing at me like, yep, that's me. That's me. I did that same thing. And so the crazy thing about it, or is not necessarily crazy, but I know so many people who have that same story.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, how do I deal with this and still be able to live a fulfilling life and then walk in my purpose? Because it sounds like what you said is you started to walk in your purpose.
Right. Absolutely. Definitely. And was doing that all along, really. It's funny. When you talk about purpose, I've known since I was probably about 16 what it was that I was destined to do. But, and just in walking in that. And sometimes I think we think too, when you're walking in your purpose, that it's going to be easier. That it's going to be, this is going to be stress-free because this is what I was meant to do. And I was put here for this and all, all of that. And so you think, oh, that should be easier than me doing something that's not aligned, with my purpose.
Right.
And so when we encounter the fact that, okay, I have more money and it's not less stressful. I mean, I'm walking in my purpose and it's not less stressful. Then that's the time I think sometimes when we do get overwhelmed and we do tend to fall apart because, again, we have those ideas in our mind about how things are supposed to be. And so it really does, it goes to the fact that, just like you said, and I love the way you put it, that, the stress will follow you. Yes. So in a situation, there are always going to be situations in life. One of my favorite quotes comes from Will Smith, where he said, it's not about managing the situation, it's about managing your mind. Because you're always going to have situations, no matter what, whether it's relationships, family, work, whatever, in life, there's always going to be challenges and things that'll come up. And so it's not about trying to figure out how to manage each one of those situations, which is what we do. We just move from school to school, from job to job, from situation to situation, always trying to manage that. And so what we have to realize is it's not so much about managing those situations as it is managing your mind. If you learn to manage your mind, then you can get through any of those situations, no matter what it is.
Absolutely. And I love this. I'm so excited to just be talking to you about this because this is something that I have been studying personally for like many years, because a lot of people know the reason why I started this podcast is that, I'm going through a transformation in my life. And there's so many things that I've learned, as an individual and as a woman, and as I grow and change and learn more about myself. And I have stress and anxiety and dealing with all of these things. I kind of learned it, on my own as I'm reading, and I'm reading like tons of books and I'm reading all this stuff, and I'm recognizing that it starts with me. I have to figure out how to change the way that I think about situations. And even when you start to, go to a mental health professional, or if you do cognitive behavioral therapy, that's the whole purpose is, okay, let's help them start to change the way they think about things so that when this stuff does come up, we'll know how to deal with it.
Exactly, because that's the first thing you do in therapy is sort of examine what your thoughts are behind whatever this challenge is. And once you get, a clear view of sort of how is it that I'm thinking about this thing?
Yeah.
So whether it is, sadness that comes from grief sometimes that we have, right, or sadness that comes from a relationship breaking up or a relationship not quite working out the way we wanted it to, or, sadness from work situations, from not having enough, the type of finances that we want. All of those things can bring about, different levels of sadness for us, right, but it's all about, so how is your mind processing that? And then what are your thoughts around it? What are your beliefs around that? Because that tends to be the thing that holds us up and that keeps us from being able to work through that and then come on the other side. And so that's what happens, when you start to really deal with depression, is that you get stuck in that. It's friends of mine and my little sister and I, we used to call it the black hole. Yeah. And so we're like, okay, you can go, like, we would do checks with each other. Yeah. Where, if I hadn't heard from my best friend in a while, or if I hadn't heard from my little sister, or if we weren't really communicating a lot, then there would be times when, we would check and I would say, okay, where are you? As in, have you gone in the hole? And so the whole analogy for us was, you can go in the black hole, but you can't stay in it. Yes. So there are going to be things, right, that are going to put us in the hole, and we're going to feel like, oh my God, this thing is so huge. Yeah. And it feels like it's a lot for us. But the point is not to stay in the black hole. It's like, you don't go there and you don't tarry, which is what we say. Right. What you need to do to deal with whatever it is, and then you come on the other side. But what happens, so often with depression and things like that, is you see yourself going to that place, to that black hole, and you end up, if you don't have the right tools, the right strategies, you get stuck in there, and then you end up staying. And then that's when you end up with the mental illness side of things, that comes upon you because you don't have the tools and the strategies that you need to be able to deal with it.
Right. I love that. And I know we talked about this the other day, and I'm transparent on my podcast and in my life. And so we talked about how I can definitely understand, how it feels to be in that black hole. But now I have the tools and the resources. So now if I feel myself sliding, right, exactly, like, let me get up, let me turn on my happy light, or let me get some exercise, or let me turn on some music, or let me do something to catch myself from going there. So I love that you came up with that way to help your family members with that. I love that.
Yep, absolutely. And so anytime, we have those challenges, that's what, or we feel like, okay, I haven't heard from this person in a while. Yeah. And so, it's like, we're checking, and we will say, okay, what's happening? What's going on with you? And sometimes it's just, oh, I've been busy. And it's like, oh, okay. But, I can even tell with my younger sister, just like how she responds. Yeah. And what she says. Sometimes I'll see her post something on Facebook, and I'm like, that makes me kind of wonder. And so I'll check in with her and say, okay, what's going on? Yeah. And she'll even say, because that is like a code word that we have. And so she was like, I'm kind of feeling like I'm in the hole. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about what it is. Let's talk about what's going on, what the challenge is. And, you can't stay there. That's not, a place for you to just be. Yeah. And so it is. It's like, some people may look at it and say, oh, well, should you really call it the black hole? But I think what we have to do is sort of normalize the positive side of mental health and just the day-to-day challenges that we have. Yeah. And don't attach such large convoluted words to it, but just use simple things. And so again, like, that was simple for us. Yeah. We could all get it. We could comprehend it. We knew that was, the code word, so that somebody needed to go and help that person out and kind of see, where they were. And if they just needed help from us, or if they needed more professional help, depending on where they were. Right. I love that. And so I'm glad that we got to this point. We talked about it because I do a research. I'm the research queen. Okay. So this is a good point for me to insert my research. And so
I always use the research because I think it's really important to talk to people about what these issues are, but also why it's super important to talk about it, right? Because there's numbers behind this stuff. This is not something that we're just talking about because we just have nothing better to do, but there's a lot of people out there who are suffering. So I went back and I pulled this survey, and a lot of times when we do this research, it's probably like 2 to 3 years out. So for this particular survey, this was from 2015. It was called the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. And at that time, when they did this survey, they found that over 43.4 million adults had some sort of mental illness. So that would be the whole gamut. It could be depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar. It could be the whole gamut. Okay. Right. So 43.4 million, that's 18%. Okay. That's a pretty big number. The second thing is mental illness was more prevalent amongst women. So in this particular study, of those 43 million adults, 21% were women and 14% were men. Okay. So that doesn't surprise me that women are suffering at a higher rate. Then more than 1/5 of the women were ages 26 to 49. So that's in our age group a bit. Okay. Right. Major depressive disorder was the most common mental illness. So we just talked about that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Now, this is the thing, and I know we know this because we've been seeing all of the people in the news, or famous people, you know, who have had struggles and who have recently committed suicide. So we recognize there's a huge issue with this. However, these are the numbers with suicide, and this just blows my mind. So between 1999 and 2014, the suicide rate in America jumped 25%, which is a huge number.
Yeah, that's a huge jump.
Huge number. And then the suicides of young women ages 10 to 14 jumped 200%. Yes. Our babies are struggling.
Adolescent suicide is through the roof.
Our babies are struggling. And I venture to say it has something to do with social media, but that's a whole nother podcast, right?
Yes, you can spend a whole nother podcast on that.
Bullying and social media
issue that we have, that we really got to figure out a way to really wrap our minds around that as adults in their lives, as parents, as grandparents, aunts and uncles. Yeah. And really be able to support our young people, in particular, young Black people, around this issue, and to take the stigma away from, reaching out for help.
Yes, that is why we're here, Dr. Tonya. All right, Dr. Tonya, don't make me cry, okay? Because that's why we're here. We want to make it okay to talk about this stuff, so that
absolutely,
if there's people out there who are listening and they have some struggles, they can understand that we all go through this at some point. And the reason why I give these numbers is also so people could recognize that there's 43 million people out there who are going through the same thing as you. But when you're in the dark place, I call it the dark place, you call it the black hole. So it's funny that we have a similar word for it. But when you're in your dark place and you're having some issues, you think that you're alone. Nobody understands. This is my little dark box, and nobody understands, and nobody's here for me. And that's what makes it even worse. So now the last statistic that I wanted to give is suicides of women age 45 to 64. So that's my age group. I'm 45. Increased 63%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so as women,
it's surprising for me, that age group, because I don't think I have really paid attention as much, because I do a lot of work with young people as well. But for suicide for that age group, that is surprising to me.
Right. And then we know with these surveys and stuff, well, it depends on the random selection of who they.
Right. Yes, it depends on who was polled, who was, where they pulled the research from, that type of thing. Yeah.
Right. But in seeing all the things that's going on around us, it's easy to imagine that could be correct. Right. And so now, talk to us about preventive mental health care. We're calling this the strategies for living with a positive mindset. So talk to us about preventative mental health care. What exactly does that mean?
Okay. So the preventative side is really just the everyday things that you do to make sure that you keep your mind right, basically. Okay. It's that, you see all these other little cute phrases about, girl, get your money right. Girl, get your relationship right. Well, you need to get your mind right too, because if you get your mind right, and again, some of that other stuff will fall into place, as you want it to, because sometimes our thoughts and the way, beliefs that we have and all those things, they interfere with your money. They interfere with your relationships. It interferes, with all those other things.
Yeah.
So on the preventative side, it really is it's your everyday practices. So, we have spent a lot of years, the last probably 2-3 decades, there's been a lot of money spent around us and our physical health. So there are gyms everywhere now. You can get all kinds of memberships. They're making it really easy for us to be able. There's a walk-a-thon, for everything. There's a walk for this, a walk for that. There's all kinds of groups. If you go on Meetup, there's tons of different groups that you can get involved in. Everything from, walking to, and then just the level of exercise, the types of things that you can do. There's Zumba, there's water aerobics, there's like riding your bike in the water. They have like all kinds. There's something I saw the other day where, I don't know, it's almost like Cirque du Soleil type stuff.
Really?
Where you're like swinging from some, I don't know, some kind of acrobatic something, but you're like on a piece of rope of some sort, and you're like you're swinging back and forth, but it's an exercise class.
Okay.
So again, like exercise has taken off, and then we're in the age of the healthy eating piece, and so there's so much conversation around what we eat. You can be vegan, you can be vegetarian, you can do keto, you can do it's like 1,001 different ways to eat now. And so what I see is the same thing is starting to take place, and we desperately need it to take place when it comes to your mental health. Yeah. The same way that you see things that promote breast self, exams, and that's something that you need to do, on a frequent basis for yourself, that you go and have your mammogram every year. All those things are in place, prostate exams for men. Well, the same thing needs to happen for our mental health, because it's just as important for us to have regular routines that support our mental health the same way that we support the physical aspect of our bodies. Yeah. And so that's, to me, what the preventative side is all about, is that we know, if you equate it to physical health, that if you eat well, reduce the amount of sugar that you take in, reduce the starches and the carbs, then you're steering yourself away from diabetes, right? Right. If you reduce the fats, cholesterol and that kind of thing, you're steering yourself away from high blood pressure. Right. Exact same thing for mental health. If you think about, let's say depression, because that's what we've been talking about. If you think about things like that, if you have day-to-day routines and strategies that are in place, you can steer yourself away from having depressive episodes. You can steer yourself away from being caught in a spiral of negative thoughts, because that's kind of what, depression is. It's being caught in a spiral of really thinking negative things, thinking sad thoughts, those kinds of things. So the same way that you give yourself, that self-breast exam, you can give yourself a mental health checkup just as well. You can do those same kinds of things to steer yourself and to check in with yourself to see, what am I thinking? So it's also a part of that being mindful with an awareness and being mindful of what's going on in my mind. What kind of thoughts am I thinking? How often am I thinking these thoughts? What's the ratio of positive to negative thinking that I have? So it really does, like when you said earlier, it begins with you. That preventative side really starts with being self-aware. Yeah. So knowing, who you are, what type of person you are. Some of us are very, analytical, and we, want everything to be just right, that kind of perfectionist type of a personality. But if you know that that's the type of personality that you have, then that's something that you can kind of keep in check. Because then you can know, okay, I tend to overdo it with this. And I tend to really, spiral off if I can't get things for me to be what I consider perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. Of course. But, it's like, when you go down that hole and you're like, you're going too far with trying to make something be perfect. then that's, again, it's a red flag for you to say, okay, I'm doing too much with this. As my wife and I would say, you're being extra. And so, it's like sometimes being extra is good. And other times being extra is like, okay, now you are really doing too much for this. And so you need to kind of bring it back, dial it in, self-correct, and then take another approach at it. So that preventative side, it starts with just our everyday routines that we have. And sort of looking at your life and seeing how many positive, routines and things do I have set up in my everyday life. Yeah. So that's where it begins.
That's really important, because I know, a lot of people, and especially me, when I was, working in the corporate environment, it's like you get so wrapped up in working these 40 to 60 plus, hour work weeks. By the time you get home and get the kids together, if you have children, and do whatever you need to do, and you in the bed, and the next thing you know, you're back at work again. And so it's like, there's no real break in between. There's no time to play. There's no time to de-stress. There's no time to relax. It's just this treadmill, or this I call it being on a hamster wheel. It's like this hamster wheel of just continuing to just do this stuff and not paying attention to our personal needs and things that we need to de-stress. So
right, and that's so true. You call it the hamster wheel. I call it being on autopilot.
Yeah.
Where, you get up every morning, you go through that same routine, you hit the door, you're in the car, you get to work, you're running all day long, you come back, you maybe eat something, maybe you don't eat something. Like you said, your day is done, you're jumping in the bed, and when you get to a point, and this is another one of those self-checks where you go through an entire day, and at the end you're really like, so what did I do today?
Yeah, right.
What did I do, or at the end of the week, when somebody asks you about your week, and you're like, I don't really know what I did this, and it's like, when you start to make statements like that, then you're on autopilot. When you get in the car in the morning going from, your home to work, and you get to work and it's a blur. You really don't know what's happened around you that whole trip. Yeah. I was commuting to DC, and, it would take an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on if it rained or any of that. And there would be days when I would get there and I couldn't tell you what happened in the last hour. And I was like, that's crazy. I've been driving in the car. Probably a whole lot of things had happened around me.
That's right.
But I was just focused on getting where I was going. I wasn't really paying attention. And so when your entire life gets like that, and that is when things tend to spiral out of control, and you'll look up and you'll have health issues. Yep. Like, where did this come from? You'll look up and you'll have mental health issues and wonder, where did this come from? And it's because we're on that autopilot. Yeah. And so, yes, we have to stop, stop just going through the motions all day, every day, and really insert opportunities for us to, like you said, to take breaks. Opportunities for us to do something different, to practice self-care, to even figure out what that is. Because for most of us, we don't even know what that is, what that looks like. And so, you have to be intentional about the preventative side of mental health. You have to be just like you have to be intentional if you want a healthy body. You have to be intentional about getting some kind of exercise, about choosing better foods. So with this, you have to be intentional about choosing self-care activities that really do help to rejuvenate you and to de-stress you. You have to be intentional. Food is also one of those things where there's, a great connection between what we eat, what we put in our bodies that way, and how our minds function.
That's right.
If you eat horribly, which was one of my issues because I was always working, I considered myself at that time a workaholic, and most of the people around me would say that. They would say, Tonya's a workaholic. She's always working. She's always working. Right. And I did. I felt like I never had time to cook for myself. I never had time to even get a, quote, healthy meal. So I was eating from carryouts across the street from the school. I was grabbing McDonald's, Burger King, whoever, could give it to me quick and fast. And I was on to the next thing. And so years of doing that, it caught up to me both physically and mentally. Because I started having migraines and just I wasn't thinking as sharply as I was before. And again, it was the horrible food that I was eating. So that plays a role too in depression and things like that. It's like when you're eating a high fat, high sugar, those kinds of diets, all that fast food stuff, then it really does affect you negatively.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because my girlfriend, she calls me the drill sergeant. So anything that comes through that front door, I'm like,
oh, you're checking it out, huh?
Don't bring that Popeyes in here, girl. What is that? We're not eating that. We eating some spinach and some turkey burgers. And they be looking at me like, girl, can we get a break? But no. And it's funny because we also did the podcast with Walter in the beginning. We did Walter Lewis Fitness Solutions, and we talked to him about the nutrition thing, and what we learned from him was exactly what you said. Like, we not only do we have to take care of our mental health, but we got to watch what we putting in. And
absolutely,
that was a good conversation that we had with Walter. So that's really good information. So now we talked about mental health and being mentally healthy. So what would be the difference between preventive mental health care and being proactive and being reactive?
Okay, so on the reactive side, unfortunately, that's where a lot of us fall.
Yeah.
Again, because we're on autopilot, we're going about our lives, we're doing our thing.
Yes.
And then, things fall apart. And something overwhelms us and it starts to consume us. And then once you get to the point where you're consumed with it, then that's when we react. So we figure, it's like, I realize that I have been, that I'm overly angry, or that, I'm feeling just really frustrated and angry all the time. Or I realize that, I've taken off work, 5, 6, 7 days because I just couldn't get up out of the bed.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't I couldn't will myself to get up, to go to work, to do anything, to hang out with friends, to, do any of those things. And so, it's that point. It goes back to that sort of black hole piece.
Yeah.
When you spent all that time in that space and then you react, then you say, oh, I need to get some help. That's the reactive side of it, but you've let it get like far out of control.
Yeah.
And so that proactive side, which is what I'm seeking to ask all of us to do, is that you think about it before it's an issue, because it's really hard. It's just like anything else, that we deal with in life. If the challenge is right there in your face, it's consuming you, it's so hard to deal with that challenge once you let it grow into a larger thing.
Right.
But it's easier if you sit back and think about it and you say, okay, I'm starting this new job. It's going to require a lot more time, effort, and energy on my part. It's going to, they're asking for me to work at least a 40-hour week, sometimes 60, 80 hours a week. Okay, if you're going into that situation, then when you think, your mental health, you say, okay, I need to be a little bit more proactive with this. I know that if this job is going to take this much time for me, then I have to be intentional about scheduling in my self-care time. I can't leave it to chance. I can't say, oh, I'm going to do it whenever, because it's not going to happen. And so the proactive side, like for me, the proactive side is it's putting it on my calendar, just like I put everything else on my calendar.
Yeah.
So if it's a time for me to take a break for self-care or for whatever it is that I'm going to do, I have to schedule it in, because I work so much. If I don't schedule it in, it won't happen. And so it's those things in our lives that, it's like the thing that screams at you the loudest and the most gets it gets the attention.
Right.
So don't wait till it's screaming to give it some attention. Do it, before there's a problem, because you want to prevent all of that. So that's the proactive side. If you know that you tend to be, let's say, relationships. If you know that your personality is that you tend to be the type of person, when you get in a relationship, you get consumed with that relationship and it's all about that person, and you cut your friends off, you do all these things because you're so consumed in that relationship, then you have to be proactive with that. So you have to say, okay, if you get into a new relationship, the same thing with the job, I have to be intentional about keeping my me time. All of my time shouldn't be relationship time, because you have to have balance.
Right.
And so that's the key piece to the proactive side. is that it's about balance. It's about looking at sort of all those areas of your life and making sure that there's no area. There's an exercise that I do with clients called, it's the Wheel of Life. And it just has like different areas on it where it talks about your family. It asks you about your career and professional life, your finances, your home life, your leisure time, and, you know, self-care activities that you have. But it divides all those things up, and it asks you, how satisfied are you with all of those different areas? The key is not to have everything be equal, because everything won't be equal.
Right.
But you want to have an area where, if you're rating it a 1 to 10, if it's an area that's a 2, if you say, okay, my vacation leisure time is a 2 because I haven't had a vacation in 2 years, then that's a problem. That's an issue. And that's one that you need to address. But you can be proactive with that by saying, okay, everybody needs breaks. I don't care what job you have. I don't care what it is that you're doing. Everybody needs to have some kind of break, some kind of vacation at some point throughout the year. And I suggest actually every quarter. And every 3 months, you do something to give yourself a break. Because one of the things that we do is we want to save like all of the break for one time. So it's like once a year, you take a vacation, you take a break. Usually for most of us, it's during the summertime. And then that's it. But if you think about it, you know, there's 12 months in a year. And so you're only going to take that 1 week out of 52 weeks in a year.
Right.
That's a very, you know, unbalanced kind of situation. So the idea is to try to, you know, again, to juggle it and to keep that balance in place.
It's funny you say that, because I was like the vacation police at my job. Because I was like a little bit older than most of my coworkers. And when I first met them, and they would have 100 hours and rolling it over, and they lose the vacation time because they're not taking it. I'm like, girl, you better take that vacation time. First of all, you're giving money back to the company. First of all,
you are.
But second of all, you need that time. Like, you have to. I learned. Listen, Dr. Tonya, I like to tell people I have a PhD in life, and that's because I have learned all these things the hard way. Okay. And so I have learned the hard way that you cannot be married to that job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can't be married to that person relationship. You have to have some time for yourself. You have to get away. You have to get a vacation. You have to take a walk. You have to, and I'm sitting here the whole time that you're talking. For those of us who's going to look at us on YouTube, y'all be wondering why I'm shaking my head the whole time. I'm shaking my head because nobody ever told me this stuff.
No, they don't. You don't get it from your parents. You don't get it from school. That's one of the things I advocate now for in schools, in public schools, to teach children stress management skills, to teach them those, but you don't get it anywhere. And you're right. We all kind of get that PhD in life because you learn it the hard way. Yeah. Because nobody ever sits down with you and says, you know, that there are specific strategies that you can use to relieve your stress. So when you feel overwhelmed, your breath is a very powerful tool that you have to be able to bring yourself back to center where you're not so overwhelmed by that. Right. But nobody ever teaches you, you know, that that's something that you can do. Right. You know, the other practices that are out there now, meditation, again, just being out in nature does a tremendous amount for us. And as kids, we grew up running around playing, but we didn't really make the connection. Right. To the fact that it was helping to clear our minds and helping with mental health. And so nobody tells you any of this stuff. You just kind of figure it out. Some of us figure it out, like you and I. Right. You know, as we went through, we researched, I was like, there's got to be a better way. Because I was living like, you know, I was in my 30s. I was like, I can't keep living like this. Well, and then when the doctor tells you, you know, if you don't change your lifestyle, you won't live to see 40. And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. Well, that was never part of my plan. Right. So you start looking for, you know, other ways, but it's like, it shouldn't be that hard. Because we should all be taught these strategies so that you don't have to struggle, because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be a struggle when it comes to, you know, your mental health and your, you know, social and emotional wellness. it doesn't have to be a struggle, but you know, if we don't know these strategies, then that's when the struggle comes. But and not everything is for everybody either. And that's the thing, you know, sometimes we hear somebody talk about meditation and we're like, oh no, I can't do that. For years I said I couldn't. And now I teach other people to do it. So, but for years I was like, oh no, I can't just sit still and do nothing, because I thought of it as doing nothing. Yeah. I was like, oh, I got to be busy doing something. I can't just sit still and do nothing for how long you want me to do this? and you know, and then I was like, oh, but now to have the moment to quiet my mind, it's the best thing ever. And my day is so off when I don't get a chance to do it. I can tell the difference in how I feel at the end of the day when I don't start my day by being intentional and quieting my mind and giving myself an opportunity to just, you know, to just welcome myself to the day and to figure out, how do I want this day to be for me? Right. I know I got all these to-do things that, you know, because I live by to-do lists. And that's one of those things where it's like, and so many of us do, where it's like, oh, I have to do this. And you wake up in the morning thinking about all those things that you think you have to do. And so it's like, oh, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And that starts creating that overwhelm the minute you open your eyes. And so, you know, it's one of those things that I always say is that, you know, the morning routine that we have is tremendously powerful for having us to have that happy life, that positive mental health. It all starts the minute you wake up in the morning and what you choose to do as soon as you open your eyes.
Yeah, that is so important. And, you know, while you were talking, I was thinking about my mom. She used to say to me, oh, you better stop worrying because you're going to make yourself sick, or you better stop stressing because you're going to make yourself sick. And all those years as I was young and growing up, I was like, how could I make myself sick? I mean, you know, in my young mind, it was like viruses and colds. And flu.
Right, that's what you think about.
Right. I'm like, how can I make myself sick? Mom, you know, what are you talking about? But after I made myself sick from stress and worrying, and now I'm like, oh, that's what she was talking about. So I'm just so glad that you and I have been able to use this platform and use our voices to be able to just bring this word to people, because like you said, the first thing in the morning, changing your morning routine, you know, one of the things I blog about, or I might put on my Facebook page, I do this Grown Sexy inspiration thing every day, which I try to. I'm a little off now because of the surgery, but I try to put this thing on there every morning, because I recognize through doing all the research and going through my therapy, that the first thing in the morning, you got to get your mind right? You have to intentionally say, this is how the day is going to be. You have to, you can't get up in the morning, hit the snooze button 5 times, jump out of bed with 20 minutes to get ready, swipe the kids up, swipe the dog out, and run out the door with coffee in one hand, no breakfast. You rushing to work in traffic. And then when you get there, you wondering why you're stressed out for the rest of the day.
Right, because you set yourself up that way.
You set yourself up for that.
You started that. You started that frenzy. The minute you hit the snooze button 5 times. Right. And then, because you still are going to try to make it to wherever you're supposed to be in that 20 minutes time instead of the 50 minutes or however much time, you know, you were originally supposed to have. Right. And so and that's that reactive side. Yeah. Because then you're running, so you're reacting. So now in traffic, you're going to react negatively to everything that happens. Somebody cuts you off. Oh my gosh! You're laying on the horn. You're all of that, because in your whole day, is a series of reactions. Whereas when you do the opposite of that, and that's that again, it's having that, you know, a powerful morning routine, and that's whatever that looks like for you. And so that's where some people, you know, sort of fall off, is that they feel like, oh, I've got to do this the way somebody else does it. Like, you know, there are personal development people like Tony Robbins and people like that who get up at like 4 a.m. I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. I'm not sure what's going on. But I'm not a morning person like that. So I'm not getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Right. And so that was me. I was like, you know, I'll get up early enough to be able to get to work. With the meditation piece, that was my holdup in the beginning, because I was like, okay, they say that the morning time is the best time to do it. It's not the only time you can do it, but it's the best time, just for the reason that you just said. because in the morning, it gives you an opportunity to set your intention for your day.
Yeah.
It gives you an opportunity to start your day off in a very powerful way. And it's actually in the morning, because when you're just waking up, you're most open. It's the moment in the day when you are the most open to receiving any kind of information, believe it or not. I used to think that was the opposite, because I'm like, I'm still half asleep. But when it comes to meditation,
Yeah.
you're sort of much more of an open vessel during that time.
Okay.
So it's easier to calm your mind, because your mind's not racing.
Right.
You just got up.
Mm-hmm.
So meditation works beautifully in the morning. But my thing was, well, okay, when am I supposed to have time to do this? Because I don't have 30 minutes. I'm not, I don't want to get up at 5. And so for me, it started out with just like, okay, 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If I can find 5, and I was like, okay, I sit on the side of the bed like this for 5 minutes. So, if you're doing that for 5 minutes, okay, you can find 5 minutes. Instead of sitting on the side of the bed like this, go, sit in a chair and meditate for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so that was how it started, was just something as simple of saying, okay, I'm going to be intentional about when I get up. I'm not going to do, because one of the things that we often do is, and I'm going to grab mine, I'm holding up the phone. We pick up this phone as soon as we get up out of bed, right?
I was just about to say that.
And if you pick up the phone and look, then what you're doing is you're giving the power of your day to your phone.
That's right.
And you're saying all the emails, the text messages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these things are going to determine my day. I'm going to go off reacting to all of that stuff. Whereas in the morning, I'm like, nope, nobody's going to determine my day except for me. So I'm going to get out of bed. The only thing I do before I come into my room to meditate is I use the bathroom. Okay. And so it's like, okay, got to do that first. I'll do that. I go, I spend however much time. It started out for me, like I said, anywhere up to 5 minutes. There were times when it was only 2 or 3 minutes. Right. But my thing was, I got to start somewhere. Yeah. And so it's like, start now, improve later. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just do something. And start so now. I would sit, I would meditate for a couple of 2 or 3 minutes. And then I would just say, I was very intentional about, today I want, and whatever it was. Yeah. I want the day to be, and my thing was, I just used 2 words. It was grace and ease. I would like to go through my day today with grace and ease. Grace and ease, because I always felt like there were lots of things that would come into play that would stress me out. And like, okay, if I don't want to be stressed out by these things, I want to be able to handle anything that comes at me with grace and ease. I like it. Sit there, I say that, I say what I'm grateful for, and I'm done. Total of 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, now I'm off to the shower, to wherever, whatever else it is I'm going to do. Right. But throughout the day, one of the things I would remember when something would come at me, if somebody that was working for me wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing, or, all these other things would happen, in my mind, I would hear grace and ease. Like, when you approach whatever this problem is, okay, grace and ease. I've got to approach this thing with grace and ease. And so it really helped to reverse things from overwhelming me to where, I would get home when I wasn't doing that. I would go through, dealing with problems all day long. Right. I was tired and wiped out. By the time I got home after the commute, I was not a nice person to talk to, really. And I didn't even realize it, because I have such a laid back personality. Right. And my grandson and my wife, they would be like, okay. And they would just say, he called me Bubby. And he would just say, he'd be right at the door. He was like 7, 8 years old then. He would just say, Bubby, how was your day? And I'd be like, and they go, and he would look like, well, I just asked her how her day was. Okay. And then, sitting down at the table when we would eat dinner, because we had a family rule that the 3 of us would sit and eat dinner. Sometimes that would be the most painful time for me, because I didn't want to talk. Yeah. So I was going to be like, okay, I just want to eat my food. And then I even went back to, and I used to hate this as a kid, my grandfather used to say, let the food fill your mouth. And he would never let us talk during dinner. There was no talking. You eat, and that's it. Right. I remember one day Terrell loved to talk. And so he was like, just talk. And I was like, Terrell, let the food fill your mouth. All this talking isn't necessary. And so he was like, oh, we can't talk. But it was like, it was me. It wasn't them. That's right. It was me. It was because I wasn't managing my day I wasn't managing my mind very well. And I didn't have any of those routines in place. Mm-hmm. So by the time we got to, 6, 7 o'clock at night, I was done. Mm-hmm. I had nothing else left to give anybody.
Yeah.
And that's what happens is we then try to operate from an empty vessel.
Yeah.
And so all of this, that we've talked about tonight is all about filling your own vessel.
Yeah.
That positive mental health side, the proactive side is about putting all these things in place that fill your own vessel. Because once you fill yourself, it doesn't matter what comes at you. All these other things can come at you, but you are equipped to handle those things when they come at you.
Absolutely. And I like that how you gave that story because I know we both I wrote a blog called It's Okay to Not Be Okay. And you had done something called the same thing. We're on the same wavelength. But, in it, I talked about, how I had gotten to a point where I felt like I was spinning out of control and angry at everybody, angry at the clerk in Burlington Coat Factory, and I'm angry at, people at work, and I'm angry at, this person, that person. And it came to a point where I had to really accept that it couldn't be everybody else.
Right.
Probably was something going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I say all the time, self-reflection is a B. However,
it is.
Self-reflection is what we have to do. We owe it to ourselves. Not only do we owe it to ourselves, but we owe it to everybody that's around us to self-reflect on a daily basis to make sure that we are handling things in our emotional life the way that we should. Because like you said, it rubs off on everybody. Look, I'm mad at the dog.
Right. And what did the dog do? Dogs don't do anything but love us. So what could they have possibly have done? Yeah.
The dog looking at me like, yo, what did I do? I'm like, yo, get out of my way. I don't like you today. And so finally I'm like, hold on a second. This is not good. Like I call it the angry Black woman syndrome, right? Because even Iyanla Vanzant had done this whole series on the angry Black woman, and she talked to several, Black women, and come to find out they were angry all the time, because obviously we have this stereotype of being angry all the time, but really it's about what's happening on the inside or what has happened in the past, which you and I are going to do another podcast about how trauma shows back up in our lives. But it's like all of these things that we didn't process and didn't deal with back then on top of what's going on now, because we don't have a process in place to deal with this stuff. It could literally get to a place where you are about to explode, or it could turn into, health issues. It could turn into heart disease. It could turn into it could turn into all these things, when there could be something that we could do to intervene and to put the strategies in place to make sure that we know how to deal with this stuff. So I love this conversation. I mean, me and you could talk about this all night.
We could. I think we're both very passionate about it. And because we are so passionate about it, time just flies by.
I know.
But we've given some great information and some good nuggets for people to be able to some practical strategies, because that's the thing I think so much with the mental health field, that a lot of times people walk away with lots of information. So, they give you the statistics and they give you, all of the, what I call the doom and gloom about it.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, so what are people supposed to do? So if we know that there are, so many, millions of people out there who are, dealing with some type of mental health disorder.
Right.
And then I think I read something the other day where they said, like, within your lifetime as an adult, 1 in every 5 of us will deal with some kind of mental health challenge.
Right.
So, if you think about that, and it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then what is it that we should be doing?
That's right.
What is it, how do we handle this? Because I don't want you to just tell me, okay, at some point you're going to have a mental health disorder, and then say, oh, I'm supposed to say, okay, and just go on with it. But it's like, what am I supposed to do? How can I prevent that? Because I'm a firm believer that it's possible to prevent a lot of these things from happening if we pay attention to our mental health. If we do that mental health self-check that I alluded to earlier, which is just, it's simple. It's just simple things. It's one, checking in with yourself often.
Okay.
And just asking yourself, how am I doing? How do I feel today?
Yeah.
You know, because that's is where it begins, because it goes back to what you said about that self-awareness. You're checking in with yourself often about how you feel and why you feel the way you feel. You know, am I holding on to something too long? Did I really react to this in kind of a crazy way? Because you know, just like you said, everybody's making me angry. That's not checking in with yourself. If everybody's making you angry, just like you said, then it can't be everybody.
Right.
It has to be this. So then you ask yourself, well, what's going on with me to make me react this way to these things and to the people, you know, in my life? The second thing is to monitor how often you access your go-to coping mechanisms. So we all have those go-to coping mechanisms that and some of them are not all that healthy.
Right.
But, you know, it's like if you go to work and your thing is, I have a glass of wine after I'm done with work. If that glass starts to turn into you having the bottle, that's one of those things where you say, okay, this might be my go-to de-stressor, but I'm using this too much, because every other night I feel like I have to have a glass, you know, I got to have the whole bottle of wine, or I end up drinking the whole bottle. Or happy hour. Happy hour is your go-to. You find yourself at happy hour 2-3 times a week. Okay. That's, you know, that's one of those signs where it's like, that's too much. Same thing with food. We all have those go-to foods. And the thing is, it's recognizing it, writing it down. I realized my go-to food was Chinese food. Chinese food from the carryout. It was, you know, fried rice of some sort, and typically egg rolls. Shrimp fried rice and egg rolls. Every Friday for months. That would be the go-to food I had. I thought I just loved it. I was like, oh, I just love it. I was coping with the week I had just had. And that was why I was eating that, because it was very comforting to me. So we all have comfort foods. And so check those comfort foods. If you love cake and your slice of cake goes to eating a quarter of the cake, or you know, you have ice cream because that's your comfort food, and you say, oh, I'm only going to eat like, you know, 2 or 3 scoops out of here, and you end up eating a whole pint. Right. Then again, that's one of those things where you have to ask yourself, okay, how much am I accessing this? And if it gets to the point where it's not healthy, then you know that there's something going on. And so I need to address this in a different way, because this food, this alcohol, this whatever is not the answer for me to this, the way I'm coping with it. And then the last thing is just to be mindful of, you know, your emotions. Be mindful of, I always say, you know, we kind of have an emotion meter. And so being mindful of how often you're feeling certain emotions. If you're feeling sad, you know, on a daily basis, okay, that's a red flag for you. Just like you said, if you're angry, if you just get angry that one day because you were overwhelmed, and yes, you were yelling at everybody, but then you go back and you have, you know, several happier days. So there's a higher ratio of, you know, happy thoughts and feelings as opposed to negative ones. Then it balances itself out and you're okay. But if you find that, okay, I'm angry all the time, I'm so angry, I don't even like, you know, myself because I'm always being angry. Then again, it's like, check those emotions. Because if you're having any one emotion for an extended period of time, other than happiness, then it's a red flag that, you know, there's something more that's going on, and you need to kind of look at it. So that's that mental health self-check. It's easy stuff that we can do on an ongoing basis. The thing is not to do it just like once a year, but, you know, you need to do it every couple of weeks. I check in with myself to see, you know, where I am, how I feel about things, reflect back on the last couple of weeks. You know, were there any situations where I really just, you know, responded to that in kind of an odd way, or an irrational kind of a way? And then once you sort of do that check, ask yourself those 3 questions, then you can know sort of where to go after you do that. But that's something that I recommend that we do, like I said, at least once once every couple of months, for ourselves, so that you don't let things get out of control.
Okay. I love that. And I'm going to put mine on my calendar, my mental health self-check.
Yes, I recommend that people do. Same with that way with your breast self-exam.
Yeah.
If we don't write it down, we tend to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that being intentional. Put it on your calendar, and then, just take that time to check in with yourself.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And thank you so much, Dr. Tonya. You've given us so much good information. I feel like we could probably do a whole nother podcast just on this.
You really could. Well, I enjoy doing this and hanging out, so we'll definitely have to, talk about future ideas.
Oh yeah,
because it is something. The more you put something in front of people,
that's right.
Then the better chance you're going to have that people are going to find something, that works for them, and they're going to be able to connect with it. And I just think, we need more of this. We're not having enough of a conversation about it, for sure.
Yep. Well, if it's up to me, we're going to talk about this a whole lot.
All right. I'm down for it.
All right. That's awesome. So tell us, where can we reach you if we want more information and resources about preventive mental health care?
Okay. You can reach me on my website at askdrtonya.com. You can also, we have a great stress management Facebook group that you can join. So it doesn't cost you anything. It's an open group, and we have lots of good conversation. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Facebook, on there is Stress Management for Busy Professionals. It's the name of the group. So if you search that group, you'll be able to find that. Join the group, join the conversation. We give out lots of strategies in there. Mm-hmm. And then, my Facebook business page is just Dr. Tonya.
Okay. And do you have an email address in case someone has a question they want to shoot to you?
Yep, absolutely. You can email me at Dr. Tonya and then I'm going to spell out the words of it. It's center, CENTER 4 FORSEW.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for taking your time out, Tonya, Dr. Tonya, and blessing us with this great information. And you and I are going to talk again. Next time we talk to Dr. Tonya, we're going to be talking about how trauma shows up again in our lives and how we can kind of manage that as well. So this is part 1 of part 2 with the CEO and Chief Happiness Officer, Dr. Tonya, the Happy Doctor. So thank you so much, Dr. Tonya.
You are welcome, Gail. I've had a fabulous time doing this with you. I think that the work that you're doing is extremely important, and you're providing, such great information to all of your listeners and viewers for the podcast. And so I just say, keep doing what you're doing, because you are definitely helping people, and there are lots of people out there who need this information.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tonya. I really appreciate that.
You are welcome.
All right. And so we'll be setting up the next podcast, and then I will let you guys know when we'll have Dr. Tonya back on the line again. So have a great weekend and be blessed, Dr. Tonya. Thank you so much.